Ladies and gentlemen, I just heard this very gutsy claim by a very famous financial YouTuber in Malaysia stating that Malaysia will become the richest country in Southeast Asia by 2040, even overtaking Singapore. And I think it's worthwhile taking a look at this claim and see, what does he mean by that, right? And is it going to come true? Let's watch on, shall we? So there is a famous financial YouTuber called Mr. Money TV. I don't really know his actual name, but I do watch his video. It's quite interesting. And suddenly he makes a video and says that why Malaysia will be the richest country in Southeast Asia by 2040. Specifically, he say richer than Singapore. And I thought to critically, look at his video. In fact, I watched it two times to make sure I didn't get the claim wrong. But let's just watch on and see what he says, shall we? So to summarize his claim is that Malaysia will have a path to Southeast Asia economic leadership by 2040 is basically hinged on this one rare thing called rare earth elements, okay, REE for short. So rare earth elements that is in Malaysia, the industry could potentially propel the GDP of Malaysia. I don't know whether on a per capita or on a gross level to potentially surpass Singapore and basically other leaders as well to become the richest country within 2 decades, right? Right now is 2025. So within 15 years, it will propel Malaysia to become the richest country in Southeast Asia. And I think there are a few claims. Number one is that there's abundance of natural resources, specifically rare earth elements in Malaysia, and there are proven refined infrastructure in Malaysia. And there is a strategic investment that's made by Japan already in this. And America is also taking a keen interest. And of course, right now, there could be a value chain integration if it could get it done properly, and it could unlock a multiplication power of 10 to 100 times potentially in this. So first of all, let's ask ourselves, what is rare earth elements? Well, it's in the periodic table, the last row of it. You can't even name some of them. But these rare earth elements are actually not that rare, okay? They are found actually quite in a lot of places all over the world. Their problem is not so much that they are rare, which is they are not, but extracting them is very costly and very harmful to the environment. But we'll talk about that later. But rare earth elements is very important for manufacturing modern technology. In the case of US, there's a big spat between US and China because US need it for electronics and weapons, airplane, and so on. But rare earth elements is highly used for EVs, wind turbines, smartphone, computers, fighter jets, medical equipment, robotics, blah, blah, blah. And Malaysia edge is that they already have it, and they already have a plant, okay, that can produce this. And it's so important that Donald Trump this time around came down to Malaysia and they were negotiating on it as well. So I think that's quite important. And as part of the negotiation, I think Prime Minister Anwar has already agreed to US that they will not restrict the supply of it, and US promised that they will transfer some technology on it. So basically, rare earth does exist in Malaysia, and they are very good in mining of it. So the value chain of rare earth goes from mining, okay, of the rare earth, the raw material, then the separation, which currently right now, I think Malaysia do have the technology in doing it, and then the metallic oxides to pure metals. There are some processing that's required. I actually don't know whether Malaysia have the power to do it right now. And then they then separate it into the magnets and things like that. So Malaysia currently have step 1 and 2, which is the mining and separation. Well, to reach the other two steps, which will help them amplify the value of 10 to 100 times even, requires some challenges. Today, China have this whole chain, and they even bought US companies in maybe decades ago to own this IP as well. And they're producing it very cheap and in big quantity. And US, ironically, were the one who started it, and they gave up this technology to China, and now they were being ransomed by them. So the bold claim is that right now rare earth, which is found in Perak, Kedah, Terengganu, or Johor, will really give you Malaysia this advantage. And there is one of the largest large-scale rare earth element plant outside China is in Malaysia. And actually, the one foreign ownership in that to help it in its technology and so on. So Japan is backing this industry in Malaysia because there's a 2010 supply shock that Japan faced. In 2010, there was some island dispute between Japan and China. It's called a Senkaku Island. There's some fight over it. It doesn't matter what the fight is, but the most important thing is that China then restrict supply of rare earth elements to Japan. And Japan desperately needs those rare earth elements. If not, Sony, Panasonic, Toyota, Mitsubishi, the entire supply chain all paralyzed. And as a result, the whole world's supply of electronics also get affected. So they realized that this is a geopolitical and economic weapon. And Japan's response is clearly to find an alternate source, and they found it through a Malaysian partnership. Now, so Japan has a plant, or rather invested in a plant in Malaysia that produce this in a large scale. I won't go too deep into that because that's not the point. And right now they are producing rare earth elements in a big way, which is great for Malaysia. My question really is, does it really help Malaysia, or is it going to help Malaysia to become the richest country in Southeast Asia in 15 years, right? So, I mean, you can have from the raw ore, and if you really develop those industries downstream or upstream or cross stream, you could have a multiplier of 10 to 20 times, 50 times, 100 times, depending on the value of the thing. And I'm not too sure the mathematics check out. So first of all, he says he used the word richest. I actually don't know what he meant by richest. I watched it 2 times to try to figure out what he meant. But I suppose richest is richest as in define, at least in money, right? So I define richest in two ways. It could be mean GDP or GDP per capita. GDP means the national income of the whole country, not divided by the people, just income of the whole country, or you look at it per capita. And specifically compared to Singapore, I don't think Singapore, in terms of total GDP today, we are the largest in Southeast Asia. We're not, okay? In fact, that is, I think Indonesia probably is the biggest one because they have a huge amount of population. But if you compare per capita, yes, Singapore is definitely the richest in Southeast Asia. In fact, maybe even top 3 in the world. So to claim that Malaysia will overtake Singapore, I think he's leaning towards a per capita, or maybe he's talking about GDP, but let's compare it, right? Okay. So Singapore GDP per capita right now is $90,000. Malaysia, when you compare dollar terms of 12,000, there's a 7 times gap. To close up this gap in 15 years, the rare earth needs to develop a lot, a lot massively, and downstream, upstream, cross stream, underground, overground, whatever, right, needs to power up so high to the point that you have to have a 19% per annual growth rate for 15 years. I never heard of any country that can do that now. Okay, 19% a year is already impossible. 19% for 15 years, I think is very tough. So I don't think he meant by that. He's a very smart economist, so I don't think he meant by per capita. I think what he meant is maybe total GDP, right? But the total GDP today in Southeast Asia, the richest country, is first of all, it's not Singapore. It's I think it's Indonesia. It's today is already $1 trillion over dollars. Singapore, maybe about 600 billion dollars or so, my guess. Okay. And Malaysia about 400 billion. The Malaysia is behind us right now. Maybe in 15 years, maybe there's a chance that it could potentially challenge that, assuming Singapore don't grow too well and they grow really well. Maybe, okay, maybe. I use the word maybe. But let's look at Indonesia, right? Indonesia in 15 years' time will easily be $2-3 trillion. So for Malaysia to overtake that, I think fat hope, okay? Fat hope. No insult intended for Malaysia, but just putting numerical reality to this. If Malaysia can grow phenomenally by by 15 years, that's really very good rate. But to claim riches, wow, I think that's a big claim, right? I think it's a very, very big claim. I don't think in 100 years, Singapore and maybe even Malaysia can can overtake Indonesia in total numbers. The population is just too big, right? So I think that the rare earth elements in terms of GDP contribution is maybe about 20 billion a year. That's phenomenal already. And to push that to a big number, wow, I think that's phenomenal. I think it probably will help to uplift the GDP by maybe 4-5% or so. I don't think you have that big and multiplier effect that it will help to overtake either Singapore on a per capita basis. I don't even think it can overtake Singapore for Malaysian GDP in 15 years' time in the absolute number. But to challenge the leadership of Indonesia and GDP while in Southeast Asia, I think it's impossible. So yeah, I thought that's too big a claim, too big a claim. Okay. Let me also just give a warning, and I think also highlight in the video that, hey, the hidden cost of rare earth mining is actually quite big. There's a lot of radioactive waste, environmental destruction and disruption in a massive way. There was a Bukit Merah accident that happened in 1980s that causes quite a lot of issue. And I'm not too sure whether Malaysia want to go down that path in a massive way again. I'll just talk about it. In 1980s, in Bukit Merah, not Singapore Bukit Merah, this is a Malaysia Bukit Merah, there was a rare earth disaster. So 1980s, Mitsubishi Asia Rare Earth Plant in Bukit Merah and Perak were were doing some mining and some process monazite. As I said, it's quite difficult to pronounce those things, containing radioactive thorium-232. The radioactive waste was stored improperly in open ponds near villages, and then radiation happened. They're way above safety limits. The community suffered terribly in terms of cancer, leukemia, birth defects, and all this. And it was the largest environmental protest that ever happened, and the lawsuit spanned over 1 decade. The plant eventually was shut down in 1994. The cleanup process took Mitsubishi over $300 million and more than 20 years. So Bukit Merah, Perak is a reminder of the environmental and social costs of rare earth processing without strict safeguards. So there is a precedent of an accident. And in China, I don't know how, but it is very harmful to Chinese environment as well. And towns and cities near those rare earth elements are called cancer town, cancer town and things like that. So actually, nobody wants to do this massive scale outside China for this reason. So going back to mathematics and GDP claim, can Malaysia overtake Singapore as the richest per capita in 15 years? Well, I think mathematically it's not even difficult. I think it's far from impossible. Okay, not in 15 years. Maybe 50, 100 years, maybe it's possible. Mathematically, it's difficult. Can it be the richest country in total GDP, even if all the rare earth, were to take on a big way? I think very tough. Indonesia GDP is very, very big. Okay, even with those multipliers coming in from a big development. So I think mathematics wise, I don't think so. I don't think so. It's too big a claim. Too big a claim. However, however, let me just say this categorically. If this do take off in Malaysia, it will help Malaysia win big. And I think it will really attract a lot of high value jobs. It's actually claimed by his video. And it will really possibly improve economically some lives across Malaysia. And I think it will also attract some interest across the world, because a lot of countries don't really have the capability of producing rare earth. So actually, Malaysia had a head start. And if Malaysia succeed in this, Singapore also prosper, right? So Singapore prosper if Malaysian prosper. Let's get that clear. It's very complementary. Today, we're already seeing, because of the powerful ringgit, a lot of Malaysian come during weekend to spend money in Singapore and go back, right? So it's not just Singaporean going to Malaysia to spend. Now Malaysian coming to Singapore to spend as well, right? As tourists. Um, and maybe, Singapore firms could join in the investments in the rare earth elements. Okay. I actually think that maybe there's a possibility there. And some supply chain integration across Singapore and Malaysia. Okay. And of course, some of these R&D, financial services, that supporting this industry can happen in Singapore in a big way. So to sum up, okay, first of all, this is not a criticism, Mr. Money. His video and analysis has always been very interesting, insightful for me to understand more of Malaysia. But to push the claim that Malaysia will become the biggest or richest country in Southeast Asia by 2040, I think seems very far-fetched. Okay, so respect to him, respectfully disagree that that can happen. But however, will Malaysia prosper from this thing? Absolutely. And will Malaysia prosperity help the people? Absolutely. And I really wish that would happen. And will the neighbors also like Singapore benefit from it? Yes, absolutely. So I think there is a video excitement, eye-catching part, but of course we also want to say that there is a possibility of this uplifting countries and cities as well. So I actually think that that could be a good way. Okay. So happy to have a discussion on this. What do you all think, right? What do you all think? And I'll see you, in live stream or video. Bye bye.